So last week we recorded this episode. My phone cut out. We lost everything. And then I was a little upset about that. So it lost everything. I was a little too pissed off to re-record. So we just kind of nixed it. We talked about talked about Adrian Peterson. We talked about Amari Cooper, their crazy games last week. Marshawn Lynch getting kicked out, but wasn't anything too crazy. But essentially, we kind of just got rid of it. So we're back this week. We have a couple changes, some big news too, I think. And I'm excited about it. I'm sure Derek is. I'll talk for him.
I'm definitely excited.
Oh, okay. But you might have heard him a little bit right there. Welcome to Gut Feeling Podcast. My name is Jason. That is Derek. And we now have a special guest with us, Kevin Cotillo from FLAFFLHouse.com and the FLAFFL House podcast. How's it going, Kevin?
It's going well. I don't know that you can call me a special guest. That's tough shoes to fill. I'm not really that special. So, but I am happy to be on the show. I've been listening to you guys and you're doing some really good work. So it's been a lot of fun getting to listen to you guys, and obviously, some banter in all of our league chats and various other items, and the stuff you guys have been doing for FLAFFL House has been great. So I'm excited.
Whether you're special or not is irrelevant, because you're the first ever guest on this podcast. So nobody can take that away from you. So
that's true, and I'm sure that I will find a way to screw it up.
We screw enough stuff up; it doesn't matter. Or at least Jason does. I mean,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. But so part of what we're trying to change here now is having a third person on here, and it's going to be we're joining up with FLAFFL, so it's going to be one of the three guys from the podcast, Steve or Sal. Hopefully, if we can convince them to jump on Hangouts, and then and Kevin, as soon as when they're available, we can record.
Yeah,
I think it's an awesome new partnership.
I agree. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I honestly haven't told the other guys because they don't really like you guys. So we'll see how that goes when you have them on. But
I mean, if Steven doesn't like us and nobody likes Steven, this will be good. We'll be fine.
Yeah. No, I'm obviously kidding. Those guys are super excited. We're all super excited at FLAFFL House, to partner up with you guys, and I think it's a good fit because. We do a lot of stuff based on gut feelings ourselves, and obviously now we can expand the gut feeling brand.
Exactly.
Speaking of which,
yep, exactly. Speaking of, we just started last week our new contest, which we decided to go off of our hashtag doing things that kind of came up a couple times. So we started that. I unfortunately lost last week in a pathetic showing.
Destroyed you. 220% increase.
Right. Exactly. I think combined we had 4 fantasy points ish, maybe 5.
Well, it was 5.1.
Yeah, it was ugly, but this week is better. It should be coming out soon if it's not already. Kevin would know that, I think.
We got the man to ask.
It will be coming out. It will be coming out tomorrow.
There we go. But
tomorrow is Friday. This is coming out on Saturday.
That's okay.
Oh yeah, so it came out yesterday. Yeah, great.
Exactly. But check that out on FLAFFLHouse.com. You can check out our week 1, see how it's set up, and essentially the loser has to have an avatar change for 48 hours, which I kind of decided just to do on the weekends, which is when I tweet the most, obviously, during football and all that. The audience gets to vote on which picture we use. Derek or I will choose, the pictures, because why not? And then the loser has to use those the avatar for the weekend, and then we start over the next week.
If people happen to check out the article and they have ideas of avatars, send them to us and we can throw them in, because right now we're just getting going. But if you have submissions of avatars, we'd love to get those too.
Exactly. Mainly because I'm really bad at photo editing. If you saw Derek's, really bad at photo editing too. I'm sure there's
I'm
some other
also terrible at photo editing, so
Aren't you supposed to be an editor, Kevin? Come on.
I can edit words. That's about it.
That's debatable.
Well, that's also true. I just take out commas. If any of you have noticed.
But so we'll get everything started this week. Derek kind of gave me a little grief about my agenda this week, but I do kind of want to talk about some defense. Not particularly playing defenses in fantasy football because that's terrible, which I'm in some leagues that do, but what am I going to do? But essentially the defenses affecting our offensive players. And Derek kind of came around to that idea a little bit more.
Yeah, it makes sense to talk about that a bit because obviously you're going to take that into account when you're setting your lineups week to week. So we talked about it with DFS and different things in some earlier episodes, but yeah, it definitely comes into account when you're looking at your lineups.
Exactly, and it's going to be short. I've only got 3 defenses to talk about. Maybe it's a little fan bias here, but I want to talk about some defenses that are a little bit surprising to me anyway. I don't know if you guys think of any other defenses while we're talking about it, but I kind of want to start with the Patriots. Kevin, I know you're a Patriots fan. I do also like the Patriots. And the big thing with their defense is that they were horrendous from the start. But since then, they've improved every week in their points allowed. So I think it's interesting to see whether they're actually improving or maybe it's just their matchups.
Yeah, I personally, I looked at this when I saw the show sheet for this episode. The first thing I did was put awful in all caps besides the Patriots defense. I think Kevin could probably tell us a little bit more about that, but I hadn't noticed the trend that they were decreasing points allowed, and I kind of figured that the game last week against the Falcons was maybe more of a sign of the dysfunction of the Falcons offense than it was the Patriots defense. But you guys tell me I'm wrong or not.
I don't know if it's just my computer, but Kevin, I think your audio might be cutting out a little bit on me.
I was hearing messed up audio too.
Okay. But if I picked up right, he was talking about Malcolm Butler coming back, or Malcolm Butler playing, and Stephon Gilmore being injured and hopefully coming back. But they're playing the Chargers this week, which we all know is not really that great of a team right now.
Although they've won 3-4 straight, haven't they?
3 straight, I think. Yeah.
Three
so
straight, yeah.
maybe they're turning around, but I don't know. Still think they'll be able to hold up against them.
Kevin also mentioned Hightower going out for the season, so that's a huge loss for them. So yeah, I guess even if they have been improving, they could struggle with that. So are they? I guess to the fantasy perspective of this, are you guys still in the mindset of start your players against the Patriots? Which
play everybody against the Patriots.
Yeah, because maybe the trend is to not do that so much anymore.
Yeah, the Patriots were one of those teams where when they started bad, I wasn't too concerned. With the coaching staff, they're going to figure it out. I don't know if it's necessarily like, oh, be scared of the Patriots now, but I don't think it's when they play the Jets again. I think they've only played them once. It's not going to be Josh McCown's going to throw 4 touchdowns or whatever again.
Oh no, he's beasting.
He is playing a lot better than I thought they were going to. I'll go with that.
He's something. They're still last in the division, though, as everybody predicted, but they're certainly far better than people thought.
Right. Another team that I kind of want to talk about are my Chicago Bears. Obviously, 2 touchdowns last week were crazy. And their defensive line is playing out of their minds right now. They're not quite like the next team we're going to talk about, but they're playing pretty good defense, especially for, they were an average defense last year, I would say, and I think they've gotten better. Unfortunately, their offense is so bad that they're on the field so much. But I think this defense is for real, and you kind of mentioned that they had a good showing, but they're still a bad defense. I don't agree with it.
Okay. Okay, to be fair, I was doing that more to take a shot at you as a Bears fan. I do actually
That's
think
fair.
like Bears historically, defense was what was winning them championships and what was good about them. Even when they made the Super Bowl back in the Rex Grossman days, they had a really, really strong defense, and then they kind of got away from that. And I do think that you're right; it is getting better. I just wanted to take a shot at you for being a Bears fan.
Their defense has to be better, right? And
Yeah,
sorry about my audio. Hopefully it's a little better now.
Yep,
you're
it's
good
coming
now.
good
You're good now.
But yeah, they have to be better, right? I mean, you have a quarterback that throws 7 times, so there's really no choice but for them to play better.
Yeah, I think maybe that's making them gel as a team because they're like, holy shit, our quarterback is only throwing 7 times. We gotta be good here.
You know, I know that we're talking about defenses, but as a Bears fan, Jason, I kind of have to ask you. We were talking about this on the FLAFFL House podcast earlier. Is that there's just no receiving options, and yet we haven't seen the workload for Tariq Cohen that we expect. So, how is that possible? They have no one else to throw to, and yet they still won't throw him the ball.
I can't explain it, and I don't understand why they're not just lining him out at wide receiver, if anything. I was kind of big on Cohen cutting into Jordan Howard this year, which is totally not happening. Jordan Howard's just getting the ball every single play, it seems like. Cohen has 1 reception for 70 yards last week, and then that was pretty much it. Like, they maybe looked his way 2 more times, I think. Maybe he had 4 targets, but I don't know how you just don't get the ball in that guy's hands. I don't understand it.
We talked about this, I think, in maybe our second episode or something like that, but a while back. And we figured that, well, there is nobody else to pass it to. So you basically play Cohen out of the slot and you have Howard out there as well to give them different looks. Can it simply be explained by John Fox doesn't like rookies, or is it something else? Like, that seems too simple. It seems like there's got to be something else going on, or they're just idiots for not using this weapon that they have that could make them a little bit more dynamic.
I mean, you have to wonder if it's maybe a blocking issue, but he's been pretty good in pass protection, so I'm not really sure that unless he's regressed somehow, in the last few games. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's really no explanation, and there's no, unless it is a John Fox thing. Obviously, we've seen that with Marvin Lewis in the past as well with rookies. Some coaches just don't like to utilize these guys, and to be fair, Jordan Howard's awesome. Like, he's really good. Even the people that didn't like Jordan Howard coming into the season have to admit that he's played very well. So, like, you have to. So, I mean, I understand giving him more touches, but you still would imagine that in the passing game they would have worked Cohen in more.
Totally. Yeah, my thing with Jordan Howard was, second in the league in rushing last year, playing not all the games or whatever, but I mean, the offensive line played pretty decent last year, and obviously he was getting the ball a lot. So I couldn't see him keeping his yards per carry average up this year. And then I thought Cohen was going to get into the running game a little bit more, but it's just not happening.
Yeah, and I'm admittedly not a Howard guy, and maybe I just haven't watched him play enough. I haven't bought into him yet, and I'm still hesitant about him. But you're probably right, Kevin, that I'm probably on the wrong side of this one. And then on the John Fox side of things, I guess you did see when Benny Cunningham came back from his injury, they were working him in there more than they were Cohen. And except this last week, Cunningham was out again, and like Jason said, he only got 3 or 4 targets, 1 reception, but for 70 yards. And then why would you not go back to him after that? Like, it just, I know Sigmund Bloom always talks about trust in rational coaching, but you don't always get it. So I don't know what you really do about that.
As a Bears fan, I hate the coaching staff. So I don't know. Defense obviously is playing good, so I can't complain too much. But offense, they got to figure something out because they've won games somehow. But I just can't imagine that an actual good defense, which Carolina is a good defense, their just offense blew it for them. A good defense is going to stop that team. But the next team I want to talk about is playing out of their minds, I think. And they're a huge surprise to me. And I think they're a huge surprise to pretty much everybody, just in football in general. But Jacksonville is just dominating the defensive side of the ball right now, right?
That is not a surprise to me.
Yeah, not a surprise to me either. Where have you been the last few years?
It's not. Well, it's a surprise that they're. I don't know. Maybe it's just the sacks that are surprising to me, but I knew they were a solid defense, but they seem like a top 2 defense, maybe the top defense in the league.
I think people have been saying for years, like they've been crushing the draft defensively, and then they've underperformed, I think, most of the other years. I don't know enough detail about it if they've had a bunch of injuries previous years or not, but I've been hearing for the last 3-4 years that their defense is so strong and they're crushing it in the draft, and then they just haven't done well. And their offense obviously is terrible. They're getting by with Blake Bortles, but yeah, their defense is obviously, it's got to be top 3 in the league.
Right. Yeah, it's impressive to watch, or at least.
I think for me, I've been waiting for this defense for a couple of years now. In fact, the guys that on the FLAFFL House have given me crap for a while about it because, I expected it last year and it didn't quite get there. I mean, they put a lot of money into the defensive line and the secondary. They've made some really, used a lot of draft picks on these guys. So it really isn't that surprising to me in that regard. It's nice to see it finally gel. You don't know that it's going to do that, but it definitely has. I mean, they get with Malik Jackson. They have great cornerbacks that are basically shutting everyone down on the outside. So you have no time to throw, and then you have no time to throw it to, no one to throw it to, and that's a problem.
Yeah, and just pulling it up, they're number 6 in yards allowed and number 2 in points allowed. So they're definitely killing it. But is it a team that is, when you see them matched up with your offensive players, that you're just like, maybe I should look a different direction? Is it that? Are they that good now, or are you still just going to play them because their offense still isn't really that good that they're going to be on the field enough?
I've been, the last week or two, I've really taken into account people playing Jacksonville just because their defense has been so strong. They're shutting everybody down. I don't remember which matchup it was last week or the week before, but there's somebody that I definitely was looking somewhere else to play because I did not want to play somebody against them. It might have been Goff. No, who did they play last week? I don't remember. Doesn't matter.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember.
I've been definitely taking it into account a little bit more. They've just been so strong that if you have another option with a better matchup, you'd be silly not to at least think about it.
They had the Colts last week.
Okay.
Which,
I can't remember which matchup it was in.
Not playing too many Colts nowadays anyway, right?
No.
And I don't think they're necessarily the Denver defense of last year or the year before when you literally didn't play anyone that was going up against them. I don't think they're quite that level, but you definitely have to downgrade your studs and try to get production elsewhere on those weeks.
Yeah, it might depend on who your other options are, and if you're looking at projections of your opponent. Like, if you need somebody to go off and have a monster day because you're projected to be behind by 10, 15 points to whoever you're playing against, you might want to go somewhere else because your studs might still have decent days because they have high floors. But if you need somebody to explode, you might want to look more at like a Kenny Stills or somebody who has those massive boom bust days, depending on matchups elsewhere.
Yeah, it's especially with their pass defense right now. It's tough to. I mean, for wide receivers at least, if you have another option, maybe with a lot better matchup, I guess you have to look that way. But all right, enough about defenses.
Finally.
I know. One thing I kind of want to talk about, because trade deadline, the real NFL trade deadline is approaching, and I know it's a hot topic right now. I've seen it all over Twitter today, which is kind of what put the idea in my head. But I kind of want to talk about players that are obviously trade candidates and where you would like to see the player go for fantasy football purposes, I guess. So in any particular order is a guy who all offseason everybody was like, wait for the trade. It's Carlos Hyde. And now that the team is officially dead, right? I mean, they've been dead. We buried him 3 weeks ago. But do you think he's going to get traded? And then 2, where would you like to see him end up where he's going to score more than he already is? Because I don't think he's doing pretty good right now already. Derek, let's start with you.
So I was looking at this a bit earlier, and I don't think that he actually will get traded. Although I can't really figure out what they're doing there, because there was that 1 week, and maybe it was just his injury because of his hip or whatever, where he was in the game, but they trotted out Breda a lot more than him, and then kind of Shanahan said riding the hot hand or whatever. But I was trying to figure out where I would like to see him go if he were to get traded. But I think Philly could be a spot that maybe he could go. I don't know about offensive schemes and whatnot. I don't study that stuff to know, but I mean they're trotting out just kind of whoever at running back. Smallwood 1 week, Blunt has a big week. It's just not really consistent, and I don't know if he went there. They're a contender. They're 6-1 right now. Like they're looking like one of the best teams in the league, and if they had like a solid starting running back, I think that could be huge for them. And the other spot, which is completely a long shot, but because he's only got this is the last year in his contract, what if Zeke gets suspended in a couple weeks and Dallas trades for him because they want somebody to try and make a playoff run? Probably not going to happen, but is that I don't know. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I think it would be great for fantasy purposes because I'm a Carlos Hyde truther, so I have him on many rosters. But I don't know that that's going to happen. I mean, I think that's why they signed Alfred Morris, or one of the reasons they hung on to Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden, because they don't want to have to do something like that. You don't want to move an asset to get a guy for 6 weeks. But I mean, that'd be great. One of the dark horses for me, I know everyone's all of a sudden excited. Not all of a sudden, I guess I shouldn't say that, but about Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington in Oakland. Obviously, Marshawn Lynch is suspended this week, so I don't know that he's going to play past this year anyway. I don't think the intention was for him to do that. So I could see potentially Oakland taking a chance on a guy like Hyde if he is let to walk next year. And that's an offense that I think would really benefit from someone of that caliber actually being in there. I know there were people that drafted Marshawn Lynch very high this year, and that's, to me, it was crazy. I gave Sal and I fought about this very often. I just didn't see Lynch coming back after a year off and being that effective. But the biggest thing was people were saying was because of the offense and the offensive line and how he would be fit there. And I think Carlos Hyde would fit perfectly there. So that's a spot where I would like to see him go if I had to choose. I think that would be a good fit. It obviously would hurt all you Washington and Richard truthers out there that are just waiting for them to get their chance. But, I think that it would be a good fit. And I think he's clearly more talented than those two guys, in my opinion.
Do you think they would do something like that before the trade deadline for this year if Lynch?
No, I mean, the trade. So I know we're talking about trades here and where we would want people to go, and I kind of blew that up because I talked about free agency next year anyway. But I just don't see him getting moved this year because what else do they have?
I don't think they actually move him either, but
even that would be awesome, right? Because then they could just, say goodbye to Lynch, cut him, let him go for the rest of the year, because I don't think he's been that effective, and clearly he has some issues going on where he's running to the middle of the field and defending players on the other team by restraining a ref. So I mean, I think it would be a good idea to move on from him. So yeah, I mean that would be a great trade too, but.
Yeah, I admittedly was one of those guys who thought Lynch was going to come in and be at least just fine. I mean, my argument was if Latavius Murray can do it, then Marshawn Lynch should be able to do it. But
yeah, that was the common argument, right? But
yeah, exactly. So it's not really looking that way. But Oakland's interesting. I didn't think of them as one of the people for Hyde, but I think that'd be pretty solid. I just, like you said, I don't think he's actually going to get moved right now either. But I think a team that should do it would be Seattle, or even Washington. Two teams who really need a consistent running game and who still have a shot at making the playoffs, because the NFC is a mess right now. At least, wild card for the most part. For those two teams, the NFC West is still up for grabs. Rams are only one game ahead of Seattle. So with a stable running back, and Seattle, is using a different guy seemingly every other play, I think it'd be a good fit for Hyde to go there. But like I said, I don't know if anybody makes a move, but I feel like somebody should.
So the question is, what would you give up? Right? I mean, because that's what it all boils down to. So you have to be a team in contention, and you have to be close enough that you're willing to give up some kind of asset. Because I don't see San Francisco moving him for nothing, right? So you're talking probably at least maybe a 5th round pick or a 4th round pick. And I know that doesn't sound like much in the grand scheme of things, but for these NFL teams, if you're not going to win a championship, that 5th round pick is a big deal next year. So.
And all these teams are knowing that there's a chance that he walks from them at the end of the year too. So, he's just a rental player, right? So, yeah, I think Seattle probably would be a good choice too. Washington's got Chris Thompson. They don't need Carlos Hyde.
Don't. Oh man, I love it. I love the Chris Thompson hype. It is so fun.
Okay, you know what? Fun. Speaking of Tariq Cohen, if the Bears could use Cohen even half of how the Washington uses Chris Thompson, it'd be amazing, I think. But
so when Thompson gets injured in 2 weeks, and
stop.
He ruins everyone's fantasy season because they're now depending on him as an RB1. I'll be interested to see. You and I can revisit that conversation and see if you still want them to use Cohen the same way.
Well, that would be those people's mistake for relying on him as an RB1, because he's producing as an RB1 right now, but I mean and everybody keeps saying it's not sustainable. But
I'm telling you right now, there are people in both dynasty and in redraft fantasy that are selling other running backs because they are now counting on Chris Thompson. It's I guarantee it's out there.
That's a mistake. That's a mistake.
Yep.
And we've seen it come up a few times in the Pigs 2 chat, like what's his trade value? And I keep seeing it over and over again. Like, if you're contending, give up your 1st round pick for him, and that's seems crazy to me. I mean, I have Cohen in that league, or I have Thompson in that league, and obviously he's doing great. But if somebody offered me a 1st, he'd probably be gone.
So Thompson's what, a 3rd year, 4th year player?
Sounds right.
I have no idea what he is.
So here's my thing though. He's not a rookie, and he wasn't a rookie last year. So I'm very weary of the late breakout in football. You see it a lot in other sports, and it does happen in football, but it's just not as often, right? A lot of guys need to produce right away. And I'm not saying Thompson was a scrub or anything, but at the end of the day, he wasn't this. So I need to see it for a full season before I invest a 1st round pick in it.
So he's 27. He was drafted in 2013 in the 5th round. So this is his 4th year.
4th year.
4th year, and he's a free agent after this season. So.
And in terms of yards, he's already matched last year's production.
Right.
So
you see what I'm getting at there?
I see what you're saying.
Something doesn't add up. Is my point. And the free agency thing is a good call too, right? Because let's say he leaves Washington for some reason next year, and he finds himself in, not that it would happen because they just signed 3 of them this year, but let's say he finds himself in New England, the backfield that everyone loves to hate. I mean, then what do you do?
Right. if anybody goes to New England, then their values immediately dropping.
Yeah, then if you're like me, you completely avoid it like the plague because I don't know. There was a couple times this offseason where I was like, Rex Burkhead, maybe I'll try, but then people wanted a first for him, and I was like, I'm not paying that for somebody who you're gonna get used the way he's been used. Like he's gonna have big games, but James White's gonna have big games. So's Deion Lewis. So's Gillislee. Like, what the hell do you do?
So that's the thing, it's funny because everyone thinks, you don't know, right? And that it really is. One of them is going to have a big game every week. But you pick which one. And it's,
right.
they don't, it's weird because typically when you see crowded backfields, you think that they're killing each other's value. These guys are not. You just have no idea which one is going to produce on a given night. So, but
that's also the allure of the New England backs, right? Because what if Belichick falls in love with one of them? You want to have that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What if Mike Gillislee scores 18 touchdowns like LeGarrette Blount did?
But that's just like
people thought he was going to after week 1.
That's right.
We're approaching the point where it's what's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again with the same result. So if you keep trying to get one of those guys as going to be like a workhorse 3-down back, it's not going to happen. That's not what they do.
Yeah, as someone who watches the Patriots just as much as I watch the Bears, I just don't even bother with any of those guys.
I think that's why you have to, and not that they weren't, but you have to seriously almost overrate guys like Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook that can come in and actually have a chance at being that. Like, I loved Christian McCaffrey coming in, but we all know he wasn't going to be a true 3-down back. He's going to be used in different ways. Hopefully he gets some more runs between the tackles, but he should produce, but he's never going to be that guy. He's never going to be that 3-down back. At least, we'll see. I don't think he is. But, Fournette, you can see him getting 27 touches a game easily. You can see Dalvin Cook getting 27 touches a game. So, you have to overrate those guys and hope you land on one because otherwise you don't have a shot because there's just too many split backfields now.
Yeah, like I've said this different times before. I don't know if it's ever been on the podcast or not, but like for at least a period of time, the true 3-down back just doesn't really exist anymore or hasn't. It seems to maybe be making a resurgence right now with these guys like Fournette. But like I only started playing fantasy in 2010, 2011, and that was kind of heading into the prime of everybody's like, oh, you have to have a 3-down back. And then it was like, well, there's 2-down backs and there's Darren Sproles and Theo Riddick and Reggie Bush and all these players. And like it just didn't exist anymore. But now with guys like Cook and Fournette and Bell and Johnson, Elliott maybe not so much, although he's getting more passing down work this year. It seems to be maybe making a resurgence, and maybe it is just simply that the talent at running back is coming back again. Like with the guys that have come into the league over the last couple of years and Barkley and Geis and stuff coming in next year, maybe it was just the talent at the position that was forcing it to go that way, more so than offenses were moving away from that style.
So here's the problem I see, and I've totally derailed your podcast on my first night, but so here's the problem I see, right? If you are, and I agree with you, it looks like the running backs are having a resurgence. However, if you're a high school kid right now, Derek, and you are incredibly talented, you're fast, you're strong, you're bigger than everyone, and you are on the football field and you're looking at the NFL and you're like, all right, look at these guys. Which guy do I want to be? You're looking at the money, right? You're looking at who's making the money, and it's maybe 5 running backs, and then a lot more wide receivers or defensive backs or linebackers or whoever if you want to be a pass rusher, you're gold. So if you were those types of guys, that's where I'm going if I'm the physical stud in high school right now. And so I wonder if, yes, we've been lucky and we'll have a few more next year that look like they're going to be, very solid pros in Barkley and Geis. But I just wonder if it's sustainable given it's just not where the money is because teams know they can get away with having the split backfields.
Yeah, and I think it's going to make it a little bit more dynamic. There's going to be ebbs and flow every few years. Like you're going to have a few years where you have this insane talent that happen to play running back. that come into the league, and then maybe we'll have a downswing again, and it'll be more all of these unreal defensive players and other positions for the money. Then maybe it goes up again. Like it's not going to be completely consistent, but obviously offenses have shown that they can do it with not just a 3-down back. So you're right. I think it's the change. It's just a changing of the guard. Maybe that it's just not going to be straight running back, running back, running back.
Yeah, we talked about it last week on our lost episode, but I think at least for the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to have the workhorse running backs be seen there. And to Kevin's point, the wide receivers are starting to come back, or are going to start coming back because of that same reason, because of all the money that's going into them. OBJ is about to get this monster contract, and people are going to see that and say, "Oh, well, that's what I want." And then, if they're 6 foot or under, maybe they go to running backs instead, because that's pretty much how it works, right? Or at least slot receivers. But we did get a little derailed. It's hard to get derailed when we don't have any rails in the first place, but so we went from Carlos Hyde to Chris Thompson to high school players. But another guy who's obviously been making headlines this week, that's apparently not for trade, but everybody thinks he is Martavis Bryant. Obviously I'm a huge fan of Martavis Bryant. I said from the beginning he's going to have a top 10 year. No, I'm just kidding. Complete opposite. I don't understand why people like this guy or why they thought he was going to save their seasons. They're drafting him in the 4th round of redraft leagues. It was insane. Obviously has some issues. He wants to get paid. He's like the guys we were just talking about. He wants to get that money and he wants to get more involved in the offense, but he's got Antonio Brown in front of him. He's got Le'Veon Bell there. He's got to understand that he's not the number one guy there. And especially after getting suspended all of last year, it's not going to happen right away.
Now he got Juju in front of him too.
Well, now he's got everybody in front of him. He's on the scouting team. Eli Rogers is in front of him now. But I guess he's a guy that other teams might want to look at. But to me, if I'm an owner, I'm looking at all these issues that he's having, and I'm saying, no, I'm going to just kind of hold off, see what happens. But I don't think it's a guy that's going to get moved, but obviously he's going to keep complaining. Do you think it'd be a move that if anybody offered Pittsburgh something for him, they take it?
I don't see why you wouldn't. I mean, if you're Pittsburgh and you get offered anything for it, at this point, you have, obviously it's a small sample size, but you drafted Juju Smith-Schuster, and he's been productive and he looks pretty good. You have Eli Rogers, who played well last year out of the slot, who was a good third receiver. Obviously, you have your offense runs through Antonio Brown and Big Ben. Le'Veon Bell, like you just said. So you don't really need Martavis Bryant. It was nice to have him, and he's a great deep ball player, or at least he was, and hopefully he can become that again someday. But he was, they just don't have that need for him. So yeah, if someone offered me something for him, I absolutely would move him if I were them. Now, having said that, who's going to offer that? Who's going to offer anything for it? Because I'm looking around the NFL and I don't know who really, maybe Jacksonville has a need for wide receivers, maybe the Bears, but are they really going to waste a draft asset when they're not going anywhere this year anyway?
To your point, Kevin, they've drafted receivers like in the last couple of years. Like Brian himself was only a 4th round receiver. I was just looking that up, and they've drafted Sammy Coates last year, and I know they've now traded him, and then Juju this year, which was Juju in the 1st or 2nd round this year.
Second.
So they've drafted guys to replace him, and they didn't have a ton invested in him as a 4th round pick. So they could easily move on from him, and they've shown that they can be successful without him. So especially now that Juju stepped up already, I don't see like what you're saying. If somebody offered them anything, I would basically move on from them. But who's going to offer it? So it's hard to say that.
Hopefully not the Bears.
I would love if the Bears did, just to piss you off.
It would be funny. I mean, look, I think if you are making a move for him, I think you're doing it for the ability to have him next year. So maybe maybe a team like that would be interested if it's a really small price to pay, because at the end of the day, if they can replace Kevin White with a somewhat semblance of himself, his old self, Martavis Bryant next year, wouldn't that be a good thing?
What about the Bills?
I guess.
Yeah, the Bills are a good option too. I mean, they don't really throw the ball downfield, but maybe they could.
Maybe they can trade Anquan Bolden for him. See, Anquan Bolden's trying to come back.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, could work that way.
Yeah, I did see that he asked for a release or whatever it was today, so he could try and make a comeback. But
I mean, that was funny to me that his whole thing was he wanted to win a championship, but then he signed with the Bills. Like, come on.
Yeah, I don't understand what he was doing there. Looking at my list now, I'm realizing that I don't think most of these guys are going to get traded, but a guy who I think the team should trade to do him a favor is Larry Fitzgerald. Obviously, they're dead now without Palmer. Adrian Peterson, unfortunately for him, is now there, but I just think they should do Larry Fitzgerald a favor, trade him to a team who can contend, because I think this is his last year, and let him try and at least make the playoffs. What do you think, Derek? Is it someone you think's going to get traded? Because it's hard to imagine him on a different team, right?
I think of all of these guys that you put on here, he's the one that I think could. If he asked the organization for a trade, I think that they would honor it, because he's like, if he went to the front office or Aaron's or whoever there and says, I want to win a championship, and I'm going to retire after the end of this year, can you trade me to a contender?
Right.
Then I think they do that. And even if it's at a super reduced cost, because just to honor him, because he's done a lot for that franchise. But I feel like they won't go looking for it unless he asks for it.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think that Arizona is dead?
Yes.
You don't think there's any chance they make the playoffs?
You clearly do think that they could make the playoffs.
Look, I think it's slim, right? And but what's Palmer out for, like 6 weeks? Is what they're saying, or
I keep seeing 6 weeks, and I also keep seeing the whole season. So
okay. So I mean, I guess you have to have the inside information on the injury, right? You have to know what that timeline actually is. But if it's 6 weeks and they can, somehow between Drew Stanton and Blaine Gabbert put together, 3-3 in those 6 games, they might have an outside shot at the playoffs towards the end of the season. And in that case, you are not getting rid of Larry Fitzgerald in any way, shape, or form. But, I think it'd be great for him, because he's one of the classiest dudes in the NFL. I think he's, a fan favorite all across the country. He could literally go to any team and be one of the most respected guys in the locker room. So with the Patriots' injuries to their wide receivers this year, I would love to see him on that roster. But
that's where I put. I marked down the Pats. That's where I would think that he would want to go if he requested it. But I don't. I guess you're right. There's still a chance.
Can you imagine him playing with Brady? Just as far as professionals go, like two of the most professional guys in the league, and
everyone to the Pats, right?
That's what.
That's it. I mean, it's funny when you're a Pats fan and people do that, but it's true, because why wouldn't you? I mean,
if I'm a free agent or a guy asking for a trade, I'm like, maybe you should call these guys first.
Yeah.
But all right, I just brought up Arizona's schedule. They got San Francisco, so they can win that with Blaine Gabbert or Drew Stanton, sure. But then they've got Seattle and Houston, Jacksonville. It says LA. I'm assuming the Rams. I don't think they can win any of those games with those guys. The only other winnable game I see is the Giants, because they're in just as bad a shape.
When's the trade deadline?
Week 10, I think.
10, I think it is now. Yeah, used to be only 6, right?
So if they lose these next 2 games, then they may be strongly consider it. So they wait till to see if they're actually out of it before the trade deadline, and if he asks for a trade or not.
Right. I think you're right on that one. It's only going to happen if he asks for it. Otherwise, he can just say, I'm gonna go out this way. I want to just stay here and do it this way. I could see it.
Don't a lot of people go out to Arizona to retire anyway? Isn't that the hot spot for retirees?
Maybe, yeah, he's been planning it for how many years now?
Yeah, maybe he can come over there.
Yeah, the only other place he can go is Florida, and he does.
That's it.
Maybe he goes to Jacksonville. I don't know. One guy that I saw pop up this week is Frank Gore. He's also on my list. He basically came out and said, "I came here to win, and it's just not happening." Obviously, I think it's going to be his last year too. Maybe he's got one more year left in him, but I think this is a guy who's a real possibility to be traded. But at the same time, I don't know if anyone's going to give up anything to get him. That's maybe the issue. I don't know if they just cut him. I can't imagine they just cut him, but I also can't imagine somebody paying for him.
I don't really think he's an option to be traded. I think he has been really good and kind of been an ageless wonder, and I think that this year he's just fallen off. I think they need to hand it over to Mac, just let him run, and I guess if somebody offers them something, but who's going to offer them something for him? Same thing. Like, why would they try to get something for him? I don't know.
What about if our good friend Amir Abdullah gets hit with the injury bug again, and they need themselves a running back? I think that Dwayne Washington and Zach Zenner aren't really the answer. Maybe they float a 6th round pick out to Indy to get the ageless Frank Gore and get his 3.5 yards per carry. I think I think it would be a solid move when you're talking about using Riddick in the passing downs anyway. So that's the only scenario that I could see happening is if you see an injury, which for Gore. But I do think on a team like that has playoff aspirations and thinks they could be a contender, especially in a division that just lost Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think I could see something like that happening, but you're certainly not going to do it unless one of those running backs goes down. So
yeah, it's got to take an injury. So yeah, I think you're right. If Abdullah went down, that's probably a great spot for him to go because Gore could just be the first and second down guy.
The other one. Speaking of the Florida retirees, I mean, if something were to happen to Ajayi, that's another place that maybe if they're still in contention. Although, if you've seen the score of this game at all, it's probably not.
I just looked. It's 28-0, I think. Yeah, I don't.
Wow.
That's. Well, this is going to be 2 weeks in a row that Baltimore shut somebody out.
No, Baltimore lost to Vikings
fraud.
last week, I think.
Oh, okay. I'm getting confused.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about the Ravens anymore, but
they're a fraud.
So are the Dolphins. The Dolphins are 4-2 going into this game, if you can believe that.
No, I can't.
Is Jay Cutler that good? I'm just kidding. He's not doing anything either.
Listen,
Alex
the one good thing about this game though is that maybe it will shut the Matt Moore people up because there are so many people out there that wanted Matt Moore to be the starter, and he's just not that guy. Can we all just move on from Matt Moore? Not that Cutler's very good, but
Yeah, I think Matt Moore can be just brushed aside. But just looking at it, Alex Collins is 18 for 113 right now. So that's a big game for him.
When he got moved to Baltimore, that was one player that I actually was a little excited about. I thought that in Seattle last year, he was a guy that I was interested in. Definitely had my eyes on him from a dynasty perspective. And obviously that backfield became a mess. So when he got cut and moved to Baltimore, it was really interesting to me. And of course, then with the injuries now, seeing him getting playing time, I think he's very good. He runs very aggressively. He's fast, and he's just a big dude.
I remember I was actually higher on him than Procise initially when they went to Seattle because I can't remember what the stat was, but I think he was like an all-time leading rusher in the SEC or wherever he went to college, whatever conference he played in. He had like over 2,000 yards every year. Or it was some big number, and he seemed impressive. So I was pretty high on him. I think I only have him in one league right now, but yeah, I think that he's the guy to own there in Baltimore for sure.
I did start him in Scott Fishbowl tonight, so I'm glad that he's doing well.
I don't know if you're keeping track of it, but they keep giving it to Buck Allen at the 3-yard line.
Of course they do. You know, why would you give him a touchdown? He only runs for 6 yards a carry.
All right, we'll try and wrap up here. I do want to talk about this last guy. Derek brought him up to me today. Didn't even consider it, but Andrew Luck is the last one on the list here. I can't imagine that they'd trade him, but
so the reason
I can imagine somebody giving up a lot for him.
The reason I brought him up was that I saw somebody mention it on Twitter or an article somewhere, like who's a trade candidate or an outside person, and they mentioned Luck and kind of saying that like he's a top tier asset and they have a lot of needs to rebuild that team. Could they give up on this season, see that Brissett looks okay as a rebuild quarterback, like he's not necessarily going to be your franchise quarterback, but could they trade Luck to somebody to get a bunch of pieces to help and rebuild, whether it's active players currently or picks or something, because they're clearly not going to be winning for a long time there in Indy. And the first thing that I thought that I had in my mind was the people that we talked about earlier in the show, Jacksonville. Like, do they have enough excess defensive pieces that they could trade some there plus some picks to get a guy like Luck for, even if it's not for this season, for next season, because Bortles is clearly not the answer there. And if he goes there, and if whether they bring back A-Rob or just roll with like Hearns, Marquise Lee, maybe draft the receiver. Who was the guy that they drafted this year, the young kid that's on IR? I can't remember who he was, but he looked promising in the preseason. I can't remember who it was. But I could see them trying to go after him if they felt that they had the pieces they could move, but still compete this year. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think you'd have about 28 teams in the league that would be willing to make that move if they could get him. Obviously depending on the price, but you're talking about, in order to move him, you're probably talking like 3 first rounds and plus to get a guy like that. And it's not like he's a guy that can help you win this year because of his injuries. I mean, so you don't expect him to come back. So it's not like an Arizona or even Jacksonville, for that matter, who's got a great defense and clearly could be a win now team with those pieces. I just like, why would you? I don't know. I think they do it in a heartbeat, but I don't know that anyone has the capital to get up there. But man, would that be interesting? I mean,
that's the thing I wasn't sure about, was like, could somebody have the assets to pay up for him? But I'm not sure they would. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I really don't know. I don't know who you would try to trade. I mean, think about this. This would make Jason crazy, right? What about the Bears? What if they traded like Trubisky and like every first rounder for the next 10 years for Luck? Wouldn't that be nuts?
Oh man, that's something that they would do too. I can't do that. I know it's Andrew Luck, but I mean, once his contract is up, then he'd be like, no way.
No, that's it. I'm out. I mean, look, the only thing that makes this a possibility is that Jim Irsay is legitimately crazy. So I could see him 100%. Doing it. So.
And okay, now think about this. Browns have 2 first-round picks next year and 2 second-round picks next year. Mm-hmm. All 4 of them for Luck? Do the Colts say no? Colts would then have 3 first-round picks. Man, I don't know.
And probably talking about there's a good chance they're the top 2. Actually, there's certainly two in the top 5 for sure.
Browns actually have 3 second-round picks next year.
They were actually the other team that I thought of was the Jaguars, because they just seem to be a quarterback away, or the Browns because they have all those picks. And I mean, I don't know, their defense is not great, but they have a lot of offensive weapons potentially if they had a good quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Browns, though, aren't you trusting the process right now, and knowing that you have 2 picks in the first round, one of which could be a quarterback in a very quarterback-heavy draft class, from what we've all heard. Obviously, we haven't seen these guys play so great this year. You know, Darnold and Allen and Rosen. Rosen looks like the real deal to me, but you know, you got to figure they'll just keep drafting first round quarterbacks until they hit on one. So
right.
But I mean, that's the type of package you're talking about: a first, 2 firsts, and 3 2s. I mean, that's close. It's got to be close, right?
It should be close, but man, I don't know. I'd still be hesitant.
I'll tell you this: as a guy that's watched Brady play for however many years now, there's not a chance in hell I would take any amount of package to trade him,
right.
Throughout any of those years. So,
it'd be tough. It's one of those positions that's just impossible.
Counter argument to that, though, is Luck hasn't exactly been Brady. Like, he's been good, and everybody thinks he's the best, but he hasn't been that, and he's been injured. And maybe that's a big product of the offensive line sucking, and he takes hits all the time. But I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta think. That team has been bad. They've put nothing around him. I mean, he has Hilton. I still believe in Moncrief for some reason. But I mean, there's just been it's been so devoid of talent all across the board. So I'd like to see him get a real chance with a decent offensive line. But
so, if I'm reading this right, I'm not watching the game. It looks like Ryan Mallett fumbled into the end zone, and offensive lineman, nope, Chris Moore, the wide receiver, jumped on the fumble recovery for the touchdown.
That's what I see too.
Oh my God, what is that?
That's Ravens football at its finest.
Anyway, I don't think Andrew Luck can be traded. I think Brissett will get traded before Andrew Luck does if somebody really wants a quarterback, but it would be an awesome trade to see, that's for sure.
That's the other thing. Think about this. Think about the quarterbacks that are going to be available most likely either next year or the following year. You're talking about Brissett, who's got 2 years left on his deal, who looks pretty good. Hundley, who's going to, we'll see what he looks like for the rest of this year. He's in that class that's 2 years away. AJ McCarron's a guy that a lot of people have been talking about. Whatever happens with Jimmy Garoppolo as a New England fan, I'm kind of hoping they figure out a way to keep both of them until Brady fades away into the sunset, but he could be available somehow. There's just a lot of those other guys on top of the draft class, so it's hard. It's going to be hard for anyone to trade for, to want to trade for a guy when you think I can roll the dice on one of these guys.
Right. Maybe we can convince Kirk Cousins to come to us this offseason.
If you can get him away from San Francisco, I'd be impressed.
It's a slam dunk for San Francisco, right? I've been saying it. I mean, everybody's been saying it, but how does it not go that way?
Yeah, it has to.
But that's everything I got for this one. Maybe we'll talk about some of these other guys next week, a little bit closer to the trade deadline, depending on what happens this week. But Kevin, thank you for joining up with us and letting us join with FLAFFL to keep this regular. And I think everything's going to be awesome.
It's definitely a lot of fun on my end, and good luck to you guys depending on who you have next week. If it's me, great, it'll be an awesome show. If it's one of the other two guys, you'll have to really work hard, but it'll be fun either way. And definitely check out FLAFFLHouse.com for those of you listening, and check out their article, which is will be released tomorrow, which will be yesterday, I think.
Right.
And thanks for listening to the pod. Find us on iTunes and probably not, well, maybe Bumpers, I don't know, Google Play and Stitcher. And you can find Jason on Twitter at Jason Tran. I am at the FFRX. Kevin, you can tell them where you're at.
I am at Wally Central.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on, man, and we're very excited about this new partnership.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.